Okay, good evening. We call to order the meeting of BUHS District 6 Board of January 26, 2015. And we will try to move expeditiously through the agenda so that we can get everybody out of here and home before the big snows hit. They probably already hit Guilford, haven't they?
It was snowing when I left.
Was it? Okay. And we'll start, as always, with the clerk's report and the approval of the minutes for January 5th, I'm sorry, 2015.
I move the minutes of January 5th as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Vicki, and seconded by Ruth. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes of January 5th, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed or abstentions? Abstain. Okay, Mike wasn't there. Okay. We have any communications? No, nobody has any communications. Anything else for the clerk's report? Okay, we move on. There are no groups or individuals tonight. So we move to consent agenda. Is there a motion accordingly?
I move to go into consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, with that, Ruth and
Yeah.
Sean?
Yep.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, we move into consent agenda and we start with finance. Finance committee was scheduled to meet on January 8th. We, however, only had 2 members available. So with no quorum, we did not move on any warrants. The next Finance Committee is scheduled for this Thursday in the central office at 8 a.m. And we need, which I will attend to tomorrow, make sure that we have adequate and proper warning for that. And we'll keep the Finance Committee posted if we miss that warning deadline. So that's it, I believe, for finance. Russ is not here. He generally reports on the SESU finance. I don't know whether they've met or not, but in any case, we do not have a report. So we move to planning and policy.
Has not met.
Okay. Teacher curriculum committee.
Has not met since our last meeting, but we do have something for the, I'm going to ask the whole board to help approve during new business at 1% that Mr. Parent will bring forward during new business.
Okay. How about BAMS committee?
Also has not met since our last meeting.
Is there a meeting scheduled for BAMS?
Not at this point. There will be one soon.
So TCC under new business we need to talk about. Okay, WRCC committee has not met and no other committees have met. So I believe that might be it for consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve consent agenda.
Ruth?
Second.
Second by Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Being none, consent agenda is passed and we move on to administrative reports. We might as well start at the far end, if that's okay with you, Mr. Lyman.
I'll defer to him because I'm finishing the cough drop here.
Oh. You yield the floor to Mr. Perrin.
So you got really fast, you got there.
With your permission, we'd like to do a joint presentation after Mr. Lyman finishes his cough drop. So we'll do the high school and middle school report and then do our joint presentation.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
A lot going on at the high school right now. Really quickly, we did start second semester. We finished final exams. Second semester started last week. And we've had some balancing of classes going on, but overall it's been great, real smooth start. And I want to recognize our counselors for the job they've done making sure that students are in the right places all the time. Rehearsals for Grease are in full swing. That's our musical this year. We'll have performances on February 12th, 13th, and 14th. That would be a great Valentine's Day treat to bring somebody to, the final performance on the 14th. And I've seen part of one of the rehearsals and it's going to be a great show. It's going to be spectacular. And also, it's hit the local media that the BUHS lip dub has been released. It was released last Friday. We did a whole school assembly. And a lip dub is a piece of performance art that, in this case, involved the entire school community, where we took 2 popular songs and some creative use of cameras and some decorations.
Yes.
And we decorated the school and actually did a wonderful lip dub. It's on the, I'm not going to say anything else about it. If you haven't seen it yet, it's on the BUHS homepage. It takes about 8 minutes. It was a great spirit building activity, and it was pretty well received, so we're proud of that. On a more serious note, I do have 2 resignations to share with the board. Both of these are retirements. The first one is from our social studies department head, Mr. Doug Kroc. Doug is intending to retire at the conclusion of this school year. Doug has been a longtime teacher at BAMS and at BUHS, and this is his 40th year in the classroom, and he would, as he says, he wants to end his teaching career feeling like he's still doing justice to the needs of his students. I can't say enough about Doug's influence on the school. He's a great sounding board for myself and other administrators. He's got a very level head, has great relationship with students, and so we're going to miss Doug quite a bit. But I would ask the board to approve Mr. Croc's resignation.
Is there a motion
I
accordingly?
move that we accept the resignation of Mr. Douglas Crock from the Social Studies Department with deep regret.
Second.
Second by Ricky. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? We have accepted the resignation.
Our second resignation is a math teacher, Ms. Mary Clement Campbell. She's been a long-time UHS math teacher. Before that, she taught at Keene Middle School. Mary has been here for a long time as well. She's done a lot with working with helping students understand math as a second language. And so she's done professional development right up until last year. And she's always worked to keep herself fresh and to really work well with her students and with the rest of the faculty. I would ask that the board accept Mary's retirement as well.
I move we accept the resignation of Mary Clement, the retirement and resignation of Mary Clement Campbell with regret.
Second.
Second by Ruth. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Opposed or abstentions? That is accepted as well.
Thanks. That's all I have.
Okay.
All right, ready now.
We're ready to roll there?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So a couple quick things. We have a district music festival happening this weekend, Friday, Saturday up in Hartford, and we had 6 BAMS instrumental musicians who made it, and Mr. Nishaka will be bringing them up there Friday and Saturday. The concert, I believe, is 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon, and so I know he's pretty excited about that. I also have a resignation of a long-term teacher. This resignation is for Joyce Sullivan, who's been in the district for 34 years, and she has a well-written letter here, which I'm happy to share, thanking the board for those 34 years, noting it was a privilege. She had a lot of professional development, and really enjoyed her collegiality during her years here and with her colleagues, and wishes the board the best as we move to the Common Core and many other things. So I like to ask you to accept her retirement and resignation at the end of the school year.
Thank you. Motion accordingly?
I move acceptance of the resignation of Joyce Sullivan from the middle school faculty.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right. Okay. Thank you.
All right, on to, well, go ahead. We had mentioned proficiency-based education multiple times over the last few months, and So we'd mentioned that we'd be happy to put together at least a short presentation to give you some basics. And as we go along here, we'll have to periodically update you, because one of the really critical pieces in this process is to keep the board well informed, as well as you know, the community and parents, etc. We're just at the tip of, we're just starting to get into it. Right now we're really in a professional development mode with the administration. We were part of a large grant which we had mentioned, and both Steve and I and Lyle and several others from the district have been going up. There's been three locations where they've done these workshops. They're 2 full days a month, so there's 12 total. And so it's a full day each time you go up for 2 days in a row, learning about the shifts that are going to be taking place. And it's really probably a 3 to possibly even a 4-year transition. Some major philosophical shifts. So I think we want to be careful not to panic anybody that these changes are coming overnight, but they are things that we're starting to talk about pretty extensively with our staffs to get them to start to understand what kind of shifts are coming. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Perrin.
So, you know, as we've been looking for the past several years, we've had a lot of different initiatives, we've had a lot of different demands placed on us, whether it's NEASC, whether it's SREB, NECAP, Common Core. I guess you could kind of pick your acronym, and there's an expectation along with it. So one of the things that we're excited about with proficiency-based graduation is it's a process that we'll set ourselves. It's a process where we'll actually be driving what we think a proficient student means. That's not to say that we have carte blanche to do whatever we want, but we'll be able to kind of take what we think is appropriate, work with the state with what they've published, work with Common Core standards, and really come up with something that we think is going to help students demonstrate success easily. Now, if you take a look at the next slide, this is a really quick overview of just a little bit of the jargon that we've been kind of working through. And you could kind of say that all of those words mean the same thing. So one of our first tasks as a district, not just as BUHS number 6, one of our first tasks is going to be to make sure that we're using a common language. And that that common language actually begins in kindergarten and works all the way through high school graduation. So even though the emphasis right now is on graduation proficiencies, those proficiencies really do affect what a student needs to be able to do, show us they can do, and show us what they know K through 8, even before they come to high school. And that's part of the reason that this series we've been going to includes elementary principals, it includes Lyle, it includes a Career Center staff member. So they're really, you know, the state of Vermont really wants us to think about this not just as BUHS, but really as we, you know, BUHS being the end of it. And I'm really glad that Keith's on board with this so enthusiastically, because that's going to make it easier for us as we look at 8th graders rising to 9th graders. And one of the other people involved is Herb Pelletier from Putney, which is another great linchpin to have an elementary / middle school principal involved as well. So I'm going to let Keith talk a little bit about what led us here.
So the state has changed. They've created a law called Act 77, and that law, it doesn't talk, that specific law doesn't talk a lot about proficiency-based education, but it talks about personalized learning plans, dual credit, flexible pathways to graduation, and really personalizing things for students, giving them many more opportunities to graduate and to show that they're proficient. And Act 77, the personal learning plans really become we're going to make those electronic, we call them PLPs, and they'll be, every student, we've already kind of created a template. The counselors worked last year a lot and created a template. And, you know, it can go anywhere from kind of a basic kind of student profile with their background and their goals and research on colleges and that kind of stuff. And we hope to, I'd certainly like to take those basics and make them interactive with kids where they can create YouTube videos about themselves, what it means to be a global citizen, to be a respectful citizen. It could cover many different areas in there, and it will be a way for them to demonstrate, to show what they've been learning in school, and hopefully they'll lead to student-led conferences someday where the student sits down and shows their parents their PLP and the progress they're making.
Could I just point out that Dummerston and Putney, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade have also begun the PLP process.
Yeah, yeah. It's a big word in the state right now. What's not up there is the education quality standards were created last, well, they were distributed last spring, I believe. And in the ed quality standards, they talk more extensively about proficiency-based education. So that's really driving some of this. But also just the movement. Most people are realizing that it's we got to make some massive shifts in education. Maine has been leading the way in New England. This is something that I've been on for a couple of years. I traveled twice to Maine with my previous school, and we visited schools up there and really saw it in action, and they were going through a lot of the growing pains. The Great Schools Partnership that we got the grant through is based out of Maine. So Maine has taken the lead with a lot of this, and New Hampshire and Vermont are starting to kind of catch up a little bit.
So one of the things that we've been talking about kind of vaguely is a flexible pathway. And the reality is that flexible pathways already exist, and we're already using them in some cases. For example, at the high school, we use community-based learning, and we use Career Center embedded credit as ways to satisfy graduation requirements. So to some degree, we've been doing flexible pathways for a little while. What this really does is this makes them central to what a student can do as they look at their high school career. So we take a PLP, student says, well, I have these proficiencies that I need to meet. We'll talk about those a little bit later. What they can do is they can look at meeting those proficiencies through a traditional way, and that's the top line, where there's a common learning experience for all students. In the middle it says common demonstration task, so everybody does the same test, everybody does the same PowerPoint, and then a common scoring guide where all the students are assessed the same way on the test. What that gives you is that gives you a valid result, a reliable result that you can compare across courses, across schools, across districts and states. Where we really are is with option 2 and 3, where you have a unique learning experience where maybe the student wants to demonstrate their proficiency in a different way. So, for example, you may have a student who can't do fractions for whatever reason. I'm going to choose a simple example. They just can't figure out how to do fractions, how to multiply them, how to divide them. So one thing you might do with that student is you might have them go into a kitchen. Maybe they do this as part of their Career Center. Maybe they do it here in our foods class. And they use the idea of scaling up a recipe or scaling down a recipe to kind of show that they know what 2/3 of a cup times 3, what that is. So it's a visual, kinesthetic, hands-on way that they can show that they understand how that works. And not only that, the test is delicious. That's really the third one, where we have a unique experience, unique demonstration task, and a common scoring guide. Finally, the last one, and I'll be honest, the last one makes me nervous, where you have a unique learning experience. Students kind of develop what they want that learning experience to do. That experience is juried by a teacher who's certified in the area. They come up with their unique demonstration task, and then there's a unique scoring guide. Why that makes me a little bit nervous is that unique scoring guide. Because what I worry about, and it happens now with some of our community placements, is we should be using the same proficiencies. So whether or not the student is meeting the proficiency in the community or in a classroom, they should be showing that they're getting assessed by the same tool. And that's one of the challenges that we have ahead of us. How do we figure out how a student is proficient in a certain task? And when they do that, how do we apply that task to an English class? At the same time, how do we apply it if a student is doing another experience in the community? So we're kind of working on that, and that's if I had to pick one that makes me a little nervous, that would be it. So this is still a work in progress. So I'll let Keith talk about the 10 principles.
Okay, I'll try not to talk too long. I highlighted a couple of them. So I'm going to refer to this handout, and if somebody get one, I think we have some extras. Anybody need one? Okay, so I'm just going to highlight a couple key pieces. This is kind of the guiding document that the Grade School Partnership uses, and just as an FYI, the Grade Schools Partnership has partnered with the Agency of Education in Vermont, and so they've kind of hired them out to help train the schools in the state. So number one really talks about learning expectations being really clear and transparent to everyone. And performance, I'm going to read the last line in there, such as the performance levels used in the school's grading and reporting system. One of the big shifts eventually is grades could potentially shift quite a bit in the way they look. Right now we have a grading system that says English 87, and you just don't really know what that means. It means that they got a B+, but you don't really know what that means. And this system really, all of a sudden, you know exactly what the score means. Number two, so there'd be common learning standards and performance expectations, and they're consistently applied. And we talked about alternative learning pathways. Number four is a big shift in teaching. Formative assessments are assessments that you use on a daily basis in class. How students are performing within the classroom, and as a teacher you make a judgment on whether they understand the objective for the day, and we use that information to guide the next class or where we're going to go next in our lesson. They're also often like homework assignments, etc., etc. This model really doesn't grade formative assessments. Often we, as teachers, grade homework and it's counted in their grades. And there's a shift away from that to summative assessments, which are more end of unit assessments. But we don't want to just think of them as being traditional pen and pencil tests. They're what Mr. Parent was talking about, a variety of ways to assess whether a student understands the concept. Let's see. Number 8 is a key one, which is different. It's a major shift, and students are given multiple opportunities to improve their work. And so we're not taking a sum of all your efforts to get to an end result. We're going to measure what you got at the end. So if you're failing to meet the objective, and then at the end you meet the objective, that's the goal, that's your score. So you can continue to try to meet it until you get it. That's a quick summary. Number 9, we kind of talked about that one. And number 10, we also talked a little bit about. Given different opportunities, the students will have input on how they learn and how they meet the standards. So that's a really quick breakdown of those 10 principles. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Steve?
Just that if you look at each of those principles, one at a time, and you ask yourself, is that good teaching? The answer is it is. I mean, these are all things that make up good teaching. And that's part of the power of this, is that this really kind of codifies some best practices in the classroom, which I think is a powerful tool for all of us.
Can I ask a quick question before we move
Sure.
on? Because one of the things you said, Keith, a minute ago, has me a little either confused or concerned, or maybe both. And that is that if somebody, it sounded like what you said, if I'm assessing it correctly, is that if somebody tests well, they can be basically failing for the entire semester, and if they come in and they ace the final because they test well, they ace the class, they're good to go, and they move on, even though they've basically failed the entire semester. If that's the way the assessment is, if that's the way that that teacher has decided to assess that class.
Theoretically, but there would be systems in place to prevent that.
Okay, because I'm also thinking of the other kind of student who does not test well,
Right.
who then maybe has been working really hard and doing pretty okay through the course of the semester, but then they fail the same test that somebody has been not doing anything all semester and aced, and they fail that test.
Well,
So, yeah.
I think the idea of saying that it's a test is a misnomer.
Okay.
I think when we talk about summative assessment, it might be a test. It might be a book report. It might be the recipe we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So I think there's different ways, and so I think one of the challenges for a teacher is to kind of work with their students one-on-one and say, you kind of think about, what kind of menu do I have to come up with of items that a student can, meet this performance indicator? Like, what kinds of projects, what kinds of experiences can they show me that they know the material and that they can master the skill? Because the other piece of this is it's not just the content in a vacuum. Like, I can tell you the phases of mitosis in a cell. It's using that information. So what's important about mitosis? What role does it play in an organism? And I brought that up because I did that with my daughter last night.
One of the examples that brought it home to me was getting your driver's license. And you can take your driver's license as many times as you need to until you get your driver's license. And there are a couple of parts of that. There's the reading test, and you can take it and not pass and go back and read some more and study some more and come back and do it again. And the same with the driving portion. You can go and not pass and go back and practice and come back and do it again until you show that you can meet those standards.
So there's a couple other things. It isn't set up so you go 6 weeks with no kind of summative assessments and then you take a test. It typically be broken up like, I don't know, but you have a kind of a small cluster of objectives that you want students to be proficient in, and then there's some type of assessment. So that might be a couple of lessons, 3, 4, 5 lessons, and then there's some type of assessment. Students don't move on unless they're proficient in that assessment. So it prevents these huge gaps that we're getting in education. It also allows the student who can ace and knows the material and they're just forced to sit there and be bored to move ahead and go to the next section. And so you can front load and allow kids to move ahead who are ready to, because we know that there are many of them.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sure. So, as we think about some significant changes, there's a lot of them, which is why, we've taken part of this year, we'll take next year to kind of roll this out slowly, to kind of let teachers become acclimated, to let you folks, as well as parents and students, kind of understand these changes. One of the things that's really powerful is it really personalizes the teaching and learning cycle. And so if you walk into a classroom that is really embraced the idea of a differentiated proficiency-based model, it's pretty rare that you see the teacher up in front delivering content. What you see more often is you see teachers working with small groups of students. And so every student, they have a task that they're working on, either alone or in groups. And the teacher really isn't the person dispensing the knowledge anymore. The teacher's really the facilitator, really the person that's helping the students understand the material that they're working with. The other idea of this is that students can look at different ways that they want to demonstrate their proficiency. But no matter how that's done, the assessment tool, whatever rubric that the teacher is going to use, is common. So if if Ian's doing something, he's going to do a PowerPoint presentation, and Sean is going to document interviews he's done with people in the community. That's going to be assessed the same way using the same tool. So the idea is that no matter how they do it, they're going to show skills they've gained and content they've gained. It's a ton of pre-planning for teachers, and we've kind of seen that in the sessions we've been to, that it's an intense process to get ready for. There's a lot of time developing rubric, there's a lot of time developing and considering those alternatives. It's going to drive a lot of collaboration at the high school and at the middle school as well. It's also going to drive collaboration between those groups of teachers. The other thing that's powerful is students and parents are going to drive the educational process. It's not going to simply be, I take Algebra 1 because I take Algebra 1 now. It's going to be, I take Algebra 1 because there's some proficiencies that I need to meet, and this is how it might be useful to me. So hopefully it eliminates the idea that I go lockstep through these courses. That's a little scary, but you know, it really is going to require that we shift the culture of students and how they look at their education.
A couple other major changes, and we don't want to go on too long here. There's a gradual move away from the Carnegie units and seat time, and when you show you're proficient in the standards identified for the course, you can move along. Transcripts and grade reporting will change, and I don't want to get into that now because we don't really know exactly how that will look, but report cards should show a lot more detail, and grades will be based on student progress against standards. And we'll be separating out, at least theoretically, work habits, like how hard students work in class, whether they turn in their homework, all of that stuff will still be reported out very specifically and highlighted which skills they are showing. So in your example, Ricky, student doesn't show up to class, doesn't participate, doesn't turn in homework, those areas are all going to be unacceptable. Mm-hmm. And those will be reported out. In fact, now it's hard to decipher when an 87, how much of that is their effort and work versus how they're performing against the standards.
Before you go on, I think it's important that people know that colleges do accept proficiency-based grading as part of the transcript, so colleges aren't relying on the ABC. And the counselors at BUHS right now are looking at that, have looked into what colleges do accept, so are working on that transition from a traditional report card to proficiency-based.
So as we think about how the standards are structured, it takes a lot of time to get your brain around it. So I'm going to show you this probably the first of several times, because it took me several times to kind of look at this. So right now what we have for BUHS is we have what we call learning expectations, and we wrote those in response to the NEASC report. And they're pretty good, and they serve us pretty well. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to ask for our teachers to kind of revisit those in the light of Common Core and in the light of proficiency standards, and come up with what are 5 or 6 standards that we think all students should meet to graduate. So we'll have this small group of standards. In addition to that, within content areas, whether it's art, science, social studies, they'll have graduation standards themselves. So a student who successfully completes their time at BUHS will meet these standards in science, whatever they may be. Hopefully, the graduation standards and the content standards will kind of go together. That's the plan. Serving those and further down are what we would call discrete performance indicators. Those are specific tasks and knowledge that we think students should have. So as we go down further and further, we go from the few graduation standards to the performance indicators, and then down to the very level of the lesson plan and the learning objectives, where we're looking at one little piece at a time. This is part of the challenge for the teachers and for all of us, is to kind of make sure that, you know, that lab that we're doing in science class addresses certain performance indicators in terms of content and in terms of skill, and that what we want to do in that lab also satisfies content standards that the department has and also serves graduation content. And it's going to mean, for some people, is we may have units that we really like to teach, and we may have things that we really think are important for our students to learn. But maybe when we look at it as a department and as a school, we might have to kind of slay some of those sacred dragons and say, well, maybe I don't need to spend this much time on Watergate. Maybe I can cut that Watergate unit down and spend more time talking about other things. And again, this is part of that heavy lifting that we have ahead of us.
One big shift there that is a massive shift for anybody who's taught is often as teachers, we have activities and we have units that we always do, and then we try to match standards to what we're doing, and we're shifting it around. We're saying, what are the standards, and then how am I going to get our students to master them? So what activities do I need to help them master it? But traditionally, teachers do it the opposite. I have this cool unit, and then if somebody says, well, what are you measuring? You know, you're trying to find standards that match the unit. And so it's a shift. It's not an unintentionally bad thing, but it, you know, there is a shift there. So we'll just really quickly review next steps, and then we'll see if you have any questions. And we apologize, we've been going on for a little bit. So we'll continue this work with the two meetings a month right through. We're going to develop an action plan, timelines. We're going to continue to do staff meetings and professional development to educate teachers and staff. I did a similar presentation to this in staff meeting the other day and took away. They left with questions and things they were excited about and compiled quite a list. We'll be communicating. I mean, certainly just having these kind of quick updates is part of getting you involved. And this timeline, it's a gradual shift. You know, we'll see if we can meet that 2016. That's just a ballpark.
What is that date?
Well, one of the things that's in the educational quality standards is that our current 7th graders should be the first students to graduate with a proficiency-based diploma. And it's funny because we mentioned that, and we have a science teacher who has a son who's in 7th grade, and he's like, "Wow, that's my son." And so there, you know, that in that regard, you know, we do have expectations from the state that we'll be doing this with at least 9th graders.
And that's 7 years out, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's southern part of the state's a little behind on this work. The northern part of the state, there's many more schools that have really done a lot with this, and so we're pretty excited to get involved and learn more.
This meshes with the Common Core, so
Absolutely.
when that starts to fall into place and becomes a requirement, if we do everything that relates to this, we will meet the standards of the Common Core.
So the standards that we talk about, those large grains, those are the Common Core and the state standards.
Yeah.
Because if you're a health teacher, you're pulling in some Common Core standards, but you also got state standards for health that have been there for a while. So we're meshing those together, and those become your large grain standards. So yes.
And down the road, we're going to want to bring to you one department's draft performance standards, so you can look at that and kind of get that, you know, get in black and white.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well,
Yes.
I read this before we got started and everything, and I'm thinking that one of the really important things, if this is going to come to fruition, is that you're going to have students and parents involved with understanding. And I look at this and I think, I mean, I read through the whole thing, I underlined what I could, and the educationese is so heavy that I'm going, what does this mean? So I think in order to be successful, you're gonna have to somehow put it into a language that somebody like myself can understand, which, I mean, even the title, proficiency-based learning, that doesn't jump right out at you and say, oh yeah, you're gonna have to know this or this. It's too esoteric.
Yeah.
Way too esoteric. So I was wondering about the Great Schools Partnership. I mean, I think that if you're going to take something like this and present it to a community, it has to be understood by the students and the teachers, much more importantly than the educators.
Right.
So it has to be a simple
Absolutely.
language.
Absolutely.
And this is anything but a simple language.
Yeah.
So it kind of slowed me down. I think what you described sounds really exciting, because if you take a student and it's more nurturing the student on a one-to-one basis, then you're way ahead. I mean, that's what they did in the IMP program, which my son went through in this school.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that he had in the IMP program was already addressed.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that if it's too esoteric for people to understand, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, we got to be careful with our terminology and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
What I really love about this whole system, the proficiency-based learning, is that this is how you're going to be assessed in work once you get out of school. I mean, I don't sit down with giving someone a review and say, you got a B+. No, you go through each skill that you have and assess it individually.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, but if it takes you 5 or 6 times to pass a driver's license, an employer's not going to wait that long.
Depends on your employer.
Well, yeah, maybe.
We do, and we get good results if we really develop our people. If you're struggling,
If they
give you every opportunity to succeed.
I agree with you to a point, Mike. But traditional systems, what happens though is students will they'll get a bunch of not meeting the standards, 50s or whatever, and then they'll get a couple grades that just get them above a 60, and they pass, and they get a 60, but there's a bunch of failures in there, and there's no guarantee. We have no idea whether they actually met the standard or not. So, we're trying to set kids up to be successful by giving them multiple opportunities to figure it out, and there are different learning styles. Some kids just take longer to learn than others, and but once they got it, hopefully they got it.
That's it. Yeah.
Lyle, do you want to add anything? Because we
That's
fired.
okay.
That's okay. We fired off
You've
a
done
lot.
a really good job today.
Thank you. Any other questions right now? We do apologize. That was a lot of information, but
We'll keep at it periodically.
Well, I do have one. The genesis of this is the Act 77 that was passed by the Vermont
which
legislature.
part? Excuse me.
The whole genesis of the proficiency-based learning is from the legislature?
It predates that.
Yeah.
It does?
Nationwide, people have been working on various proficiency models for decades. New Hampshire had one a few years ago that was, I think they called it the competencies, and it wasn't nearly as nuanced as this, and it didn't really go anywhere. And so I think Act 77 is just the way the Vermont legislature's kind of gotten on board with it. So, but it predates for quite a bit.
It seems pretty exciting in a lot of ways, but
Yeah.
there are a lot of logs to get over.
It's daunting. I mean,
Yeah.
the amount of work is daunting for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, how about student council?
All right, Tana is actually at a hockey game right now, so this is Bethany and she's filling in.
We have
But
Bethany Martin
yeah.
with us.
we concluded our Feed the Thousands recently, and our total item count was like 1,800. That's without the money factored in. I think once we added up our donations, it was more around 8,000 items. So that was great. We far surpassed our goal of 2014.
Good job.
Our next step is moving towards administrative lunches where students can meet with administrators like Mr. Perrin and Mr. Margaitis and voice their concerns, especially in wake of the dress code being reviewed. We're looking for student opinions and student concerns as we move forward in that process. So we will try to work with the administration in that regard. That's basically what we're doing right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Central office.
I think we're good.
You're good?
We're all good.
I think you're good too.
Thank you. Yeah. Frank's getting budgets done everywhere.
Yeah, Frank is up to his ears in budgets. Let's see, Career Center, Michael is not here. Don't have anything specific. We've handled the resignations. So I guess, and Ricky has an item for new business, but we can move on to unfinished business, and we have one policy hanging out there
Yeah,
that,
that's, we haven't met yet, so
okay,
continue to hang out there, kind of putting it off.
month
you know,
of
waiting
March,
for-
hopefully, by March.
Yeah, we've been kind of waiting until after the annual meeting.
Okay. Anything else for unfinished business? And we move to new business, and the first item there is the annual meeting motions. Normally at this meeting, we would, Ron would have had a list of all the motions for annual meeting, and we just parcel them out. They're probably similar but not identical to last year, so I'm hesitant to do that right now, but what I would like, if everybody's okay with that, once we have the exact listing, I'll take a look at who had what last year, and I'll contact you and say, are you okay with doing this one or doing that one or whatever? And I've already been told by at least a couple of people that they'd be happy to have me do the budget one, so.
You gotta make a motion.
I usually get that one, so we'll do it that way, and we'll have it assigned. It's not very difficult because it's presented to you in big writing to do at the meeting. So we'll get that taken care of.
Well, and if I can just jump in about this too, just so that everyone knows. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be at the annual meeting. I have a work-related thing. It's our annual Youth of the Year event at my job. So unfortunately, it'd be like the principal missing graduation. So I kind of have to be there, unfortunately, and it got booked for the same night.
Oh, I'll read your,
Okay, great, thank you.
whatever it is.
So I will miss the annual meeting.
We'll
but-
divvy them up, and whatever was customary for you to do, we'll find another.
Thank you.
I don't think there are as many articles this
No,
year as there
there are
have been in
not.
the past either.
But everybody will get at least one. Don't worry. Everybody will get their minute in the limelight. Okay. Yeah, one other item, and Ricky has an item under new business.
Yeah, just wanted to, under new business, in a second I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Perrin. TCC had not had the opportunity to meet, and there's 1% request that's out there from the high school, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Perrin to present that, and then we can just do it as a whole board, and that way we're clear and above board on everything. So,
Sure. So, television production, our studio has served us very well for many years, but we are entering an age of digital transmission and HD TVs, and we need to do some upgrades. And so we have purchased much of the equipment. We've purchased the new sound mixer. We've purchased the new software to run the sound mixer, and new soundboard. All of that has been purchased and it's all ready to go. And matter of fact, some of it is installed. But we have two teachers, Allison Cram and Toby Moore, who do need some time to get familiar with the equipment. And they just, it's new, they just need to figure out how it works. BCTV has been wonderful with their assistance for us. They've actually sent people to help us install. They've actually helped us kind of understand how the new equipment interfaces with their equipment. So it's been a mutually beneficial partnership. What we're asking for is for these two teachers to get a total of 3 days of 1% time for $613.68.
so I would like to move that we approve the 1% fund for, can you say that amount again?
Well, with Social Security added in, $660.63.
Okay, for those two teachers.
I'll second that.
Okay, Ricky and Ruth. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, it is approved.
And that was per teacher? The $660.63?
Yes, 2 teachers for a total of 3 days.
Okay.
And if you want to pass that down this way, we can get the proper signatures on that as well.
Oh,
Okay.
that's right, just sign it.
All right. If there's nothing else on the new business, we should just make sure we're all clear on the meeting schedule. We have not scheduled a meeting for February 2nd, in that the annual meeting is the following Tuesday. Unless I hear from Ron, perhaps that there's something that needs to be attended to, which we'd have to do pretty soon, because that's just next week. We will dispense with the first Monday in February, and the annual meeting, as a reminder, at at BOHS in the gymnasium will be on February 10th at 7 p.m. and we encourage you to invite other citizens to be part of the process. We always have a limited number that come out. We would always like to see more involvement in the process. So if you talk it up amongst your friends and acquaintances that are voters in any of the towns, and see if they'd like to spend a couple hours with us on Tuesday the 10th. Then we do not have the third Monday schedule either. That's a holiday. So we would dispense with the second February meeting unless it's necessary, and have our first March meeting on would be the second of March. So has everybody understood it to be that way from the last time we talked? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Finance, I will make sure that we can get that warned for Thursday morning, and any other committees that we've announced when we don't know for sure when we'll have policy and planning, but soon.
Well, and I think both TCC and BAMS are going to get back on our schedule come March. Now that now the budget's over and annual meeting's over, we'll get back on our regular schedule then.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say that I noticed, I believe it was on Vermont Digger, that a student from BUHS, Ryan Taggart,
yes,
got a second prize in Senator Sanders' State of the Union competition, and I believe it said there were 454 or something like that students in the competition in 27 different schools.
Yes.
So this,
We actually had 2 from
and
BOHS.
there was another student whose name I can't
Friedemann
remember,
Schmidt.
who got honorable mention. So we had 2 from this school. Now,
special. That's great.
Yeah, that's good.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Seeing none, we stand adjourned, and have a safe trip through the blizzard.